is here, and that refund check feels like a fresh start.
Exactly. But instead of splurging, imagine using it to pay down debt or even as a down payment on a new home.
That's what we did. We called Ed Locke at USA Mortgage, and he showed us how our refund could open doors we didn't think were even possible.
Ed explained the options clearly, whether it's reducing what you owe or building towards home ownership. He makes the numbers work for you.
Hi, I'm Ed Locke with USA Mortgage. Your tax refund can be more than extra cash. It can be the key to financial freedom or your next home. Let's talk about the best path for you. Call me today at 502-680-0953.
We're back with Robert Bideau. We had an amazing break. Appreciate that. This is a whole new thing for us. Robert's being a guinea pig. Thank you, Robert, for your patience and working with us on this. You were about to talk about something that you feel that everybody needs to know what's going on in Mexico.
Well, I was struggling with what to think, with what to talk about next, actually. I mean, because there's so many things that we can talk about, but let's talk about the rise of folk religions in Mexico, because you were talking a little bit about the cartels. You had touched on that a little bit.
Sure.
And there's a rise in alternative religions in Mexico right now, specifically the Santa Muerte, the Holy Death, which is a Grim Reaper image that's being venerated by people in Mexico. And then also the Jesus Malverde. And if you've ever seen Breaking Bad, that image was in Breaking Bad. It's an image of a man with a mustache wearing a white shirt, and he has like a red tie on. And usually there are busts of him for people who are devotees. And he was actually a real person. He was like a Robin Hood who was, steal from the rich and give to the poor. And the narco traficantes, the cartels, have glommed onto him, and wherever you see that image, outside of someone's home, it usually means that there's some drug activity going on. But
Wow.
the rise of these folk saints, they're filling a void, okay? Because things in Mexico are not so great right now. You could say the same about the United States. There's inflation, a lot of people out of work, whatever. And, they say when the United States sneezes, oh, I say sneeze and it sounded like somebody was sneezing.
It's my daily train coming through for the 17th time today. I
Okay,
apologize.
that's all right.
That's the worst part of building your studio 37 feet from a train track, just so you know. Not a
Well,
good
I live in
political
as
decision.
an aside, I live in a place, the largest rail yard in the entire world is here where I live in North
Really?
Platte.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the rail yard here is bigger than any other rail yard in the world, in China, Russia, wherever. It's here in
Wow.
North Platte. Yeah. But anyway, okay, back to what we were talking about. So when America sneezes, Mexico catches a cold. That's what they say. So whatever happens here, if the economy's bad or whatever, then it's really bad down there. And so things are kind of bad down there, and they have a leader who's more kind of communist, who's dismantling things and trying to change things. And there's a lot of uncertainty there. So there's a lot of uncertainty, and the Catholic Church, the regular saints, and the regular devotion that people have had for centuries, it's just not working anymore for people. So they're looking to gravitate towards something that's more powerful. And it's kind of dark, these saints that are becoming more and more prominent in Mexico. The Santa Muerte is the most holy death, and it's a Grim Reaper image. And unlike a Catholic saint, you can ask the Santa Muerte to put curses on your enemies. Okay. So there's nothing in the church, the Catholic Church, that will do that, or to undo curses. So people are turning to these alternative faiths because we're in dire times, or they are down there. And a couple of popes have visited Mexico just to try to quash these movements. Pope Benedict XVI was the first one to make mention of these rising folk saint religions, and Pope Francis also went and talked about this stuff in Mexico, but nothing's stopping this because it's necessary. It's filling a void because the Catholic Church is too soft for the hard times that Mexico finds itself in. So it's very interesting.
That is very interesting. And let's just veer off course for a minute. Let's Brett's like, oh, because Brett is Catholic. So, right, Brett? You look very stoic. Maybe he's frozen.
You hear me?
My question is, how do I put this? Because first of all, let me digress. I've said it before. I'll say it 100 times. And on this podcast, we do not shy away from things that are God related. All of us are either Christian or Catholic. We believe what we believe. If you like that, great. If you don't, that's okay. Let's have a conversation about it at the very least. We're not going to shy away from any topic. And you brought it up, so we're going to bring it up. Every single time in the Bible where we as humans have used idol worship, it has only led to moral separation and decline among the masses and eventual some sort of judgment. Do you think that judgment is coming in Mexico? Because this is an important thing, especially if people are using idols to control the masses for their own benefit, for their own gain, for their own financial advancement. What do you think? I mean, you know this area.
Well, you know what? You can take religion completely out of the picture. Now, if you're wishing ill on your neighbor and you're using an idol, to curse your neighbor so that bad things will happen, that violates every basic, human tenet across the globe, as far in different cultures. There's no culture out there that says treat your neighbor like dirt, and all religions tell you to love your neighbor,
Right.
Be nice and kind and everything. So what this is doing, it is injecting kind of this anti non-aggression principle, we can say, into the whole society, where you can use these idols and stuff to get back at people or to have these bad things happen. And so that's a road that's not going to lead to a good place. And you don't have to be religious to see that,
Right. That's so
Right.
scary.
And a few years ago, Mexico's
Yeah, I just looked it up. It's like 8.
No, go ahead. You looked up something?
Oh, can you guys hear me? I think there's a delay.
A little bit of
Can
a
you guys hear
delay, but that's okay. Go ahead, Brett. Brett has a computer that is
I looked it up. It's 8 to
776 years
10%.
old.
Okay, you said you
I-
looked up some statistic. There was 8.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes,
Yeah, we
you're
can hear
good.
Yeah, sorry. Okay. Sorry. So 8 to 10% of the population are devoted to just the Santa Muerte alone. And it basically said that during the COVID pandemic, this grew exponentially.
Yeah. Because
So,
what are you
yeah, I just
supposed
thought
to
that
do
was
against?
pretty
Well,
interesting.
yeah. What are you
But yeah,
supposed to
I
do
did
against
just
the
order a new
scary
computer.
virus, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So, and what I was going to say is a
Right.
few years ago, Mexico had its first satanic temple open up. in a town in Veracruz, and that whole area has a witch festival every year, and it's known for blending religions. Like, there was a big escaped slave population that was there in the town around there, and so there were a lot of African beliefs that were incorporated with Christianity, kind of like Santeria in, the Caribbean, or Macumba or Candomblé in Brazil. A blend of African and Christianity, African religions and Christianity. So there was that going on in this region of Veracruz state, and they opened up a temple. And and there's a big statue of Baphomet, in the center and all of this stuff. And Baphomet worship also is increasing in Mexico. That's another side thing. But so in this temple, it's interesting what's going on there, because it had a big backlash before it opened. But the person who was behind the temple, he dotted all of his I's, crossed all of his T's, got all of the permits that were needed and everything. And it was a few years in the making, and no one could touch him, because the Constitution of Mexico guarantees religious freedom. And so he had all these protesters who were coming at him from the left and the right. It wasn't just like hardcore right-wing traditional Catholics. There were liberals who were against the church too. So, but he could not get shut down because he did everything by the book. And the temple is, going strong, and people are going there and visiting and stuff. So, man, like I said, a big Baphomet statue greets you when you open the door. So, that's
crazy.
Yeah.
I've been to Mexico, and some of the most beautiful cathedrals I've ever personally witnessed are in Mexico.
Yeah.
And Mexico is primarily Catholic, correct?
Yeah.
As far as a religion. It would seem to me that there is a grand, in what you've said, Robert, there is a grand opportunity for people of all religions to go to Mexico and create a new revival. It sounds like it's in desperate need of a revival, to be honest.
Well, Protestantism is growing there, Jehovah's Witness, and a lot of other different things. Mormonism is growing too, so there are, besides the Santa Muerte and other folk saints, people are turning to other branches of Christianity and other, established religions too. So yeah.
Knowing what you know, I just, and we'll turn page here in a second. We'll start talking about something else, because sometimes religious conversations make people uneasy. And I get that. Coming from a person who was out of the spiritual realm entirely for 20 plus years, I personally get that. Having been back in it, I also get it. But the underlying thing here for me, Robert, and I want to see if you agree or disagree and why, is that on a very core basis, people need to believe, have a desire, a wanting, a almost internal desire to reach out to something. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, sure. I think we're programmed for that as humans.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And if the Catholic Church or the Protestant Church aren't fulfilling that, aren't feeding that, then something else absolutely will jump in there, and that leads a nation to disaster, unfortunately.
Yeah, and Mexico has a lot of potential. I mean, the central part of Mexico is perfect, where most of the people live and where most of the ancient civilizations were. The soils are great because of the volcanoes. The soils are great. The climate is amazing. It's like San Diego. It's like Southern California, 72 degrees every day, pretty much. It could be, and with the mineral wealth and, even human resources, it could be a powerhouse. That country could be, amazing. It has a lot of potential, I think.
Speaking of the ancient civilizations,
Mhm.
the next topic I'd like to bring up has a lot to do with that, and has some stunning parallels to ancient Mesopotamia's history, and
Mhm.
that is the, I'm going to try to say it. Please don't hold it against me. Kumitsan giants. I didn't say it right, did I?
Now remember the Q and U, followed by a vowel, it's the sound of K.
Okay,
Like
just a K.
like the largest city in New Mexico where I grew up, I spent most of my childhood, Albuquerque. Those there are
Uh,
Q's in there, but it sounds like a K. So
did you
just
take a
remember
left?
that. Yeah, right. That's
Okay.
yeah,
Well,
Bugs Bunny.
to my credit, Robert, I barely speak English,
No,
so
that's okay. So Kinametsin. So
yes.
what they were giants. And yeah, we can talk a lot about them if you want.
Let's get into that because the history and the things that I read about the Cunamidzin is that those were the creators of the Great Pyramids in Mexico and South America, of the Aztecs. They were the ones that built the things that we all today are like, how the hell did they do that? Because we can't do that today.
Right.
So
And they
take us
did
down
that
this
in the
path.
previous world
Right,
because
right.
we are in the fifth world of creation right now. What they call them the different suns, okay? Like the sun in the sky. So we're in the fifth sun right now, and the ruler of this world is Huitzilopochtli, who is the god of war and fire, actually, and the patron of the Aztec Empire. But before Huitzilopochtli was the ruler of the world, so we're in the fifth sun, like I said. Number one, the first one was Tezcatlipoca, and that god was the smoking mirror god, and that was the lord of the first realm, and then it got destroyed, and then the god that ruled the second sun or the second world is Quetzalcoatl, and I'm pronouncing it like the Aztecs would. People often call him Quetzalcoatl, okay, the feathered serpent god. Quetzalcoatl was the second sun ruler. The third sun ruler was Tlaloc, the rain god. Then that world was destroyed. Then the fourth sun was presided over Chalchihuitlique. Say that 5 times.
No, thank you.
Chalchihuitlique. And that was a female water spirit. And in the fourth sun, in that fourth realm, the fourth world, before it got destroyed by flood, because Chalchihuitlique was a water goddess, she destroyed the fourth world by this gigantic flood. Before the flood, giants were living. The Kinamitsin were living in this fourth incarnation of the world. Okay. And they supposedly built these cities, like you were saying, the pyramids. Um, Even one of the giants called Tenoch, he supposedly founded the Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan. He was a giant. And the giants were all wiped out because they weren't obedient to the gods. So Chalchihuitlique, you gotta say it melodious like that. Chalchihuitlique, she destroyed the world by crying for 52 days. So for 52 days, she cried, this water goddess, and flooded the world and flooded the giants out. Okay. And in northern Mexico, the Seri people have a similar story about there were giants and then they got flooded out. Okay. And they're, thousands of miles away. But anyway, so there were 4 that remained who are supposedly still holding up parts of the sky now for these giants. But in the previous world before the flood, that's where these and they were hairier than humans too. And they were the ones that built these gigantic ruins. And so the Aztecs had to, if you look at it, okay, if you don't look at it as history, okay, some people will look at it as history. There were giants, there was a flood, that's part of historical fact. That's what some people believe. But if you take that out of it and you just look at it from a legends point of view, what happened is when the Aztecs migrated from northern Mexico to make their home in central Mexico, they were, foreigners who came and settled in to central Mexico. They built their capital on an island in the middle of a lake, according to their prophecy. They would stop wandering when they saw an eagle on top of a cactus eating a snake. And if you look on the flag of Mexico, that's in the center of the flag, that whole thing. So they wandered until they saw that, and then they built their city there. But there were ruins already in central Mexico when they got there. So there was Teotihuacan, and there were other big pyramids, like the biggest pyramid in the world, Cholula. By volume, the biggest pyramid in the world is in central Mexico, called Cholula. And so when the Aztecs got there, they said, the myth makers were saying, how do we explain this? And so if you look at it from a mythological standpoint, that's what they did. They kind of backtracked and said, okay, how do we explain these big ruins and these big pyramids? And giants built them. So that's their explanation. But some people will, and a lot of hardcore Bible people, believe in the flood and giants that lived and stuff like that. So it kind of reinforces some Western beliefs of what happened in antiquity, But
one of the things that I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry.
No.
One of the things that we've learned in doing numerous shows is that every single culture in the world has a Bible story, or I'm sorry, a flood story. Every single culture, be it Africa, Mexico, Russia, every single culture in the world has some sort of flood story. To me, it's not even a question if a global flood happened or not. It absolutely happened. But the things that happened prior, Brent and I both very much appreciate Graham Hancock in what he says, and the story of the Younger Dryas and what happened prior to 12,500 years ago, give or take a few years. But man, my question is to you, Robert, are the pyramids and the step pyramids that are in Mexico and South America, are those laid upon like the pyramids of Giza as far as angles toward the sun, or are they more respective of the night sky? How are those lined out? Are they just random? Do you know?
No, they're not random. There is what they call sacred geometry, and I forget the exact angle that most of them are in, but yeah, they are aligned astronomically. They're always, because the pyramids are they're usually part of sacred ceremonial centers, and so they have to have these alignments towards certain stars and everything. So yeah, there are definitely a plan. There's definitely a sacred plan to these sites, especially the ones with pyramids. Definitely.
I was able to go to the pyramids of Chitzina. Am
Oh,
I don't know.
Chichen Itza.
Thank you. Yes, that.
Mhm.
And this was several years
Steve has
ago.
trouble with words.
Man, I do, especially
okay.
words that are not of the English language. I have a hard enough time with English. Anything beyond that, psh.
Yeah,
But
that's
this was
Yucatec Maya. So yeah,
yeah.
we'll give you a
So
little leeway there.
thank you. I appreciate it. So the one thing that I noticed, this was back, and I don't know that even if you still can, but we were able to scale, literally walk up some of these pyramids. And walking up them is not such a big deal. However, when you have to turn around and walk back down them, they are so steep and the steps are so close together. I'm a big dude, and it's like, holy crap, I'm going to fall, and I'm going to be the 30-second victim of the pyramids walking down because I'm going to fall on my head 100 million feet down this thing.
Okay, then let me ask you this.
Sure.
Then if you're having a hard time going down the staircase, did giants build those pyramids?
Good point. Because no,
If they can't walk up and down those stairs, right?
Right.
Now, so I proposed that in another show, and the host, who was like sharp as a tack, said, well, maybe they were built by the pyramids were built by giants, but the staircases were built later by regular, normal size humans. I thought, wow, that's pretty smart.
Yeah.
So
that's pretty smart. Yeah. And you know, from those steps that they're made for, you know, you said you're a big guy. The average Maya stands about 5 feet tall. So their feet are like a size 6 or 7 men's American size, you know, so the steps are perfect for the people who are living there. And so some people say, well, that one guy who got me, you know, he said, well, yeah, maybe the staircases were added later by, you know, modern humans. So it could be, you know.
My question to you is twofold. I have two questions because I have two beliefs about the Egyptian pyramids that some people agree with, some people do not. I don't care. Explain it differently to me, fine. I'll listen. I'm not hard set on it. But I absolutely believe that the Great Pyramid in Giza, for example, is a power plant. There's no factual evidence that says that the Egyptians built it. There is no factual evidence that says there was ever a tomb inside the Pyramid of Giza. There is a bazillion, however, facts of evidence that this thing could, in fact, generate piezo, and I'm going to butcher that word, piezo power as a power source, be it the water underneath it and all of the different chambers, the way that they're built and the way that the pyramid is lined with in the inside. My question to you, Robert, is there any evidence whatsoever that these pyramids that are built in Mexico or South America were actual tombs? They were, you know, altars for the gods, or is there something more to them that we're not privy to?
Well, you know, they're a combination of all of those things. Like the pyramid that you walked up in Chichen Itza, I'm assuming that you walked up the main pyramid, right?
The main one that they had excavated at that point.
Okay.
They still had 150 square miles that they hadn't even excavated.
Okay, so the main pyramid there, I'll tell you, in 1992, I was allowed to go inside the staircase.
Oh wow!
There is an entrance where there's an interior staircase, and when you get to the top of the interior staircase, there's a jaguar that's made out of jade that's there. Okay, so in this case, this was a sacred temple, but another thing too, they did LiDAR on this area, and they built the pyramid over an old cenote. And what a cenote is a sinkhole. Okay. that were used for sacrifice, for, worship, for appeasing the gods. They would throw trinkets in there, or, human sacrifices. So this pyramid is on top of what archaeologists think is a sacred site that goes back like 4,000 or 5,000 years. So in that case, that's more of like a sacred place for worship. But then there are also pyramids that did serve as tombs, like at Palenque, okay, the Temple of the Inscriptions. Pakal, the king of Palenque, one of the longest ruling monarchs in history. He was beat out by Queen Elizabeth II in 2015, I think, or 2014. She beat him out of the ranking of like number 5 of the longest ruling monarch, because they had dates. They had a writing system, and this man lived to be in his 90s, just like Her Majesty the Queen did. But so he was buried in a pyramid. His sarcophagus is in a pyramid. So pyramids have multiple functions. And the one in Mexico City that was just excavated, within the past 40, 50 years, when they were digging the subway, the Mexico City subway, they finally discovered the Templo Mayor, the main temple of, what was left of it, because the Spanish raised it. So if you go down to central Mexico City, the Zocalo, the main plaza, you'll see the big cathedral, and then you'll see, like an excavation site that's right next to it. And that used to be the twin pyramids to Tlaloc, the rain god, and Huitzilopochtli, the god of war. And in that case, that was a sacrificial pyramid. They would bring sacrifice victims up there, and priests would, cut their hearts out and then throw them down the stairs. So
Willingly. That's the thing that blew me away. That when we were doing the tour and we were doing that, they were saying that these people were willing to do that. They weren't like the sacrifices, the victims, if you will. They didn't fight. They didn't struggle. They knew in their heart that they were doing the right thing and that they were chosen because of X. But they knew that that was a needed sacrifice for the whole of the city.
it depends on the type of sacrifice. A lot of sacrifices were captives in war.
Oh, really?
Okay. Like, especially in the Aztec world. In the Maya world, it was a little bit different. Okay. The sacrifices in the Maya world were, some of them were captives, but then some of them were willing, And I think where you heard that was probably at Chichen Itza, right?
Yes.
And
yes,
that's a Maya
absolutely.
site. But in the Aztecs, that was an empire, and, people, there's this whole thing in the United States now, Mexican Americans talk about the colonizers and, and all of this stuff. You took our land. This is stolen land, all of this stuff. But the Aztecs, they were colonizers. Like I told you, they came down into central Mexico from the north. So they went down there, they occupied central Mexico, and then they started conquering people. And, they were subjugating people and everything. It wasn't a happy place to live, the Aztec Empire. If you were Aztec and you lived in the capital city, you were part of the nobility, whatever, yeah, great, living was easy and all of that stuff. But if you were Otomi, if you were, part of another Tlaxcalan, if you were another ethnic group that was conquered, or it wasn't a very happy place. And that's why a handful of conquistadors were able to topple the Aztec Empire. They didn't do it because they had horses and steel and all that. They did it because they had tens of thousands of disgruntled native allies that wanted to overthrow the Aztecs.
And the Aztecs kind of sealed their own fate by being as good as they were at things. Not only This is my study. If I'm wrong, Robert, please correct me. But the very things that made the Aztecs strong, their system of roads, their system of city states and village, all of those things made it very easy for enemy forces to invade them.
Yeah, it was. You're right. Yeah.
They didn't have to cut through the jungle. They just hopped on the main road, went up 55, and boom, there you go.
Yeah. Yeah, you're exactly right. And the conquistadors were welcomed by Emperor Montezuma. He was curious as to who these foreigners were. So the conquistadors were living actually in Tenochtitlan, the Aztec capital, for a few months before things went south. Okay. Cortez, the conquistador, was an invited guest by the emperor. And so we have precious diaries and, firsthand accounts by the conquistadors, the priests and stuff that went along on this expedition. And so we have, wonderful firsthand accounts of what life was like in, the capital city of the Aztecs. But it was a pretty brutal life. And so when people, especially Mexican Americans, second generation, they talk about the colonizers and, and all this stuff. The Aztecs were colonizers. They were pretty brutal people that, they wanted to, there's all this leftist talk, academic talk about cultural erasure and genocide and all of this stuff. And the Spanish tried to genocide the natives. They were doing that long before the Spanish came. The Aztecs wanted everybody to assimilate, even down to religion. I was telling you earlier that there are different varieties of stories. In Greek mythology, it's cut and dry. Athena came from Zeus's head, and she's the goddess of wisdom, and has some other functions and stuff. And we know that's that. But in central Mexico in the Aztec Empire, Quetzalcoatl, he had the feathered serpent, could do this and that in this place and could do this and that in the other place. And there was an emperor, Ahuizot, who sought to unify the religion and make a standard state religion. So there wasn't even freedom of religion to an extent in the empire. You had to go along with this belief system. So I don't know. It didn't sound, some of it's romanticized by a lot of these people, and a lot of modern day people who claim to trace their ancestry down there, they're just looking for a more idyllic kind of life to look back on, but it wasn't all, it wasn't all pleasant. That's for sure.
Well, I think a lot of that comes from all of us want to think that we came from something more than what we are. You know what I mean? I feel even and I don't want. I just feel like if we all look back, I thought I was raised in the wrong generation. I always thought that if I had a choice of where I wanted to be born and raised, it would have been the medieval area with knights and stuff. But the truth and the fact is, the knights were kind of like the NFL of today. 0.0007% were knights, and everybody else was shoveling poop. And I would have been in the shoveling part, so it probably wouldn't have been very good. And everything stunk back then. I can't imagine the smells of the Middle East. So
yeah, and
I
so
like bathwash.
We have like young Mexican American men, especially, who are looking back and, I'm Aztec, I'm indigenous, when they're really mixed, because most people in Mexico are a mix. They do have native and they do have European and some African mixed in there and everything. And it's called mestizo, the mix. But a lot of people now, because of politics or whatever, they want to just identify with the indigenous part. And a lot of them, if they were to go, because I have so much experience down in actual real indigenous communities that I buy my merchandise from, if these people like from LA, who can, they barely speak Spanish, they are Americans because they were born here. If they went down to an indigenous community, they would be rejected because they're not one of them,
Right.
So it is like this romantic view of the the glories of the past, like you were saying, with being a knight,
Right.
So I think in America, that's just okay.
Go ahead, Brett.
Oh, I was just gonna say in America that seems to be a big thing, like with the 23andMe doing like the DNA testing, or like Ancestry.com, and like just knowing where you come from, because especially in America, and I'm sure like Mexican Americans probably feel the same way, but it's like a melting pot of all these different cultures and religions, and especially if you're not knowing where you come from, or what purpose of life is, you kind of want to like go back to your roots and like have something to, especially if you don't think that America is a great country right now, which a lot of the left leaning people, I would say, are on that side. So you're not patriotic in any way. So you're trying to find something to be proud of in your ancestry or something like that. So it's kind of interesting.
Isn't it amazing how humans try to do or feel or be a part of whatever it is that makes them feel good, as opposed to what it just is? If you think about it, to what Brett just said, in America we're a melting pot, but we were a melting pot by choice for 100 years. We were a melting pot by not choice for another 100 years. And now we are a melting pot by people who we don't want to be melted into for the last 100, 50, 60
and
years.
they don't want to be melted into what was here too. They
Right.
want their own, their own
Right.
little enclaves and stuff. So yeah, I don't know.
And I'm speaking for a pilot, from a very professional manner here. One of the things that, as a realtor, I'm not allowed to do is what's called steering. I can't take you as a Hispanic individual or an African American individual or an American Indian individual and say, you might be more comfortable in this area, right? Because that's where, other people of your lineage is, or a white person. And it doesn't matter what your race is or your sexual orientation or any of those things. However, it doesn't matter what I do, because most people want to be in those areas regardless. Just saying. And that's
you know
facts.
what? If you want to circle back to Mexico, there are the big cities in ancient Mexico had barrios or neighborhoods of foreigners, meaning people from other provinces, like Teotihuacan, for example, one of the biggest powerhouses of ancient Mexico, the big pyramids that are right outside of Mexico City. There were barrios of people from other parts of Mexico, and how they know that is mostly from looking at pottery. So if there was a neighborhood where there was this pottery style that was common from the Gulf Coast of Mexico, that would indicate that people from the Gulf Coast of Mexico lived in that neighborhood. They wanted to be among their kind in this massive metropolis, that attracted people from everywhere. So it happened in the ancient world too. It always
just
happens.
Is people want to be amongst people who they feel comfortable with, bluntly. And that's not bad. That's not a negative. That just is.
Right. Yeah.
Do you know much about ley lines, Robert? Have you ever?
No, I don't.
That topic?
No, and the reason why I don't get into that is because I have tried to research ley lines, and because people have asked me about that. Are some of these ancient cities on ley lines? But I've tried to research that, and I've seen conflicting maps of ley lines. I
Yeah.
haven't seen, I mean, I've seen some going this way, some going that way. So I can't really speak to ley lines with any authority at all.
Yeah, and it's funny. Depends on the map that you're looking and the place that you're looking at. The only reason I bring it up is because a lot of times pyramids and or things that are not of this world tend to happen on those ley lines. The Pyramid of the Sun in
Teotihuacan.
Teo
Teo
T
T Wakan.
Wakan. There you go. Teotihuacan. Almost. I think I
I feel like
edited
this is
extra
that
vowel.
like Wheat Thins. Have you ever seen the Wheat Thins commercial where they're trying to get Stewie to say, and he keeps pronouncing the
Wheat
H? This is Steve.
Anyway, the Pyramid of the Sun is apparently on an energy node of a ley line in some of the things that I researched. I was just bringing it up. I didn't know if you knew about that. Ley lines are one of those things that people either believe 100% and you can't convince them otherwise, or they're just kind of fringe and you're like, it's coincidence that that particular line does a circle and ends up on this place.
Yeah. It's been confusing to me, so I don't. And it seems like ley lines, that's more like of a European kind of thing, but I don't know. But
I tell you the weirdest and the most convincing evidence of ley lines doesn't come from physical structures that are here for thousands of years. It comes from crop circles that are unexplained, that can't be explained, that were created by things that there's no way a person and or a group of people could construct in a 24-hour period, much less a 7-hour period, whatever the night is. We've done crop circles a couple of times, and some of them, yeah, they're fake. Some of them are, there's no way. You can't convince me that they're not what they say that they are. But anyway.
Is there anything like crop circles in Mexican folklore or culture?
that's what started my whole channel and my whole journey, actually, crop circles. Because
Really?
what was, yeah, because what happened was, this is an interesting segue. I'm glad you brought this up. What happened is I was returning to the United States on from a buying trip. I was flying from Guadalajara to Phoenix, and I was settling into my, airline seat, and I had my magazine that I would always buy a magazine called Muy Interesante, and that means very interesting in Spanish. And it's a magazine that's still published, and it's about paranormal stuff. And so I'm sitting there, waiting for takeoff, and I'm flipping through the magazine, and there's an article about crop circles. And there were crop circles in a cornfield somewhere in central Mexico. And there were patterns I didn't see, and I was reading it, and it was analysis by Mexican scientists and stuff. And I was like, well, this is an interesting perspective, and these are crop circles I've never seen before. How much else, how many other things are not leaving the country? And are, how many legends, paranormal events, different histories, stories of UFOs, stories of creatures, whatever. How many of those things do we not hear about in the States? And then that's what got me on the path to do Mexico Unexplained. So
Wow.
the crop circles, that was the spark that led
Wow,
me
that's pretty
to
cool.
do this, because on my buying trips, when I go to these remote places and stuff, I always hear about legends and, a saucer that crashed or, whatever. And so I was listening to these stories and seeing these things, and I knew that nobody in the United States had ever heard of, whatever I was listening to or seeing. So that's what started me on this.
Okay, well, now you brought it up, I have two great questions for you.
Great.
Question 1, where can people go see and buy the things that you are going to do on these buying trips? Where's your website, your Etsy?
Oh, well, you
people
can.
all their
Oh,
stuff.
well, great. Okay, that's a nice thing, an opportunity you're giving me to plug my business instead of
Absolutely, brother.
the regular web Mexico and Explain. It's my company is called Sueños Latin American Imports, Suenos, Sueños. That means dreams, because everything that I carry was once a dream, something in the imagination of an artist. It's mostly handcrafted stuff from Mexico and South America, and so if probably the best place to go would be my Etsy shop. I sell on Etsy, Amazon, my own website. My own website's kind of dated, so I don't like to send people there. But
What's your Etsy page?
Sueños Imports, SuenosImports, Sueños Imports. And I also sell on Walmart.com too. So Etsy, Amazon, eBay, Walmart.com, and my own website. That's where I sell. But
Awesome.
probably the best place to see me is on Etsy. And it's better, it's more visually appealing and it's better organized, I think.
That's beautiful. I'm there now. It's a beautiful place.
Oh, great. You found it then. It was easy to
did.
find. Good. Sometimes I wonder about that, but yeah, so that's what I do.
Wow. I just want to say that I absolutely love some of these pieces. My goodness, they're just
Great.
perfect. Perfect. I just want to let people know, because we appreciate you coming on the show. We want to make
Yeah,
sure
well,
you
thank
get a
you.
proper plug. But listen, right now, I'm just looking, and some of these products, can you take us? I mean, you hand pick all of these products, I'm sure.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
And you have a great eye. First of all, let me say that. Let
Well,
me
thank you.
just, I'm looking at this. And for whatever reason, I don't know why it has drawn my eye, but it is a tin/silver tooth for $12.50.
Oh,
It is just, it looks like a pendant of some sort. You could put it on a necklace, you could put it on whatever. And it's just handmade.
it's called, you know what? It's called a milagro. And to circle around to Mexico Unexplained, my very first show was about milagros. And a milagro is a magical charm or a healing charm. And so how this is used, they're usually body parts. And so let's say you have a toothache. You take this metal tooth and you make an offering at the church or at a shrine. And then you say your prayer, and that's your offering for healing for your tooth. But people use these nowadays in like arts and crafts project for home decor, a lot of different things. Most people are not using these for, the way that they were intended to be used.
Well,
And that's
I-
okay,
And
Yeah.
and it says it's just made from tin. Is that made from what they can find? That's obviously not made in a factory. That is
Right.
handmade
It's spin cast, it's hand cast, and it's made with a bunch of, different metals that they throw. A lot of it's pot metal. And you can see there's something that doesn't belong there. I a long time ago, like 10 years ago, I acquired the contents of a stamp store. And so I sell also for collectors and for crafters. I sell lots of postage stamps too. But anyway, it's mostly of course, the handcrafted stuff. You might want to block one of those there. There's
I see
one
it.
there that's okay. You can keep scrolling.
Yeah.
But
It's fine. Mainly we have some kids. The one thing, we've always kept our show PG because we do have some moms that listen to the show with their kids in the car.
Mhm.
They're not watching the video, and that's okay.
Okay.
This stuff is beautiful and handcraft. If you need an amazing gift that is out of the way, please go visit Robert's Etsy store. This is gorgeous stuff. I think I found my new Christmas shop. My kids are going to be very befuddled when I start sending them all this Mexican stuff. But often when I go, I like to take cruises. People know this. A lot of times I do on my cruise, my Christmas shopping while I'm on cruises. You have a beautiful
nice.
Hawaiian shirt, Brett. Just saying.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
so on my travels to pick up the
Well, it's actually a
merchandise-
polo, but yeah.
What? Okay. No, what I was saying is
Oh, can
on
you hear
my so on my travels to pick up the merchandise, that's how I've stumbled across all of the stories and stuff that I talk about. So yeah.
Robert, the question I have is, so when you go back I'm sure you've met contacts, and now over the years, you've grown these contacts into friendships, I'm sure.
Yeah.
When you go back, when it's time to go back to do another buy up, are they just like, oh, here's the stuff. Now let's actually talk about all this stuff that we have now, because we want to tell you about all this new stuff that we found out.
Sometimes that's the case, yeah. So because some of my suppliers know I'm into this stuff, yeah. So I do get fresh stories from regular people, but I always try to go to new places to find new merchandise, because that's how I keep everything fresh. And when I had a retail store, I had a Yelp review, and someone's called me the Indiana Jones of Mexican arts and crafts, because I would go, like Indiana Jones, to these obscure places to find stuff. And, and that's where I would find the obscure stories too.
Dude, well, I could literally talk to you for days, Robert, about all the different things. So one thing that we do here on the show is we rate if something is newsworthy or not. So let's just talk about the two base things that we talked about and see if we believe that those are newsworthy. And that's kind of how we keep our name. Did I ever tell you how this podcast started? We started talking about news things and things that weren't getting the proper news coverage. Then it kind of divulged into politics, blah. And then we decided to do something that we actually enjoyed. But we wanted to keep our name because we'd already built an audience with that name. So this is how we continue to be able to do that. And we always start with Brett, because Brett, his opinion is usually the deciding factor for us. But Brett, when it comes to Lechuza, do you think that story requires more or less news coverage? And
Well, hopefully when I start talking, I'm not super laggy, but can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I would say it's definitely newsworthy, especially just learning about how many sightings there have been, the fact that people are still seeing this thing, the fact that it kind of has some callbacks to Mothman, which a lot of people believe in as well, and have had tons of sightings of that. I think this is definitely thumbs up.
Yeah, I will second that. I was actually blown away, Robert, by the amount of sightings, like Brett said, about how many different sightings all across not only northern Mexico, but in the southern United States that Lechuza actually had. I also give it a thumbs up. What do you think, Robert?
Well, if you go to, like I said, the comment section of my YouTube show about the Lechuza, it keeps growing with firsthand accounts of people. So I think more investigations warranted. So I'd give it a thumbs up too.
Awesome. Now, I'm not going to try to say the name. I'm done with it. I can't. I've tried. My tongue doesn't work that way. The key. Okay, I lied. I am going to try to say it.
Kinemetzin. Yeah.
Kinemetzin Giants.
Very good.
Brett,
Yeah.
what do you think? More or less news coverage on the Giants of Mexico?
You know what's funny is when we were preparing last week, we actually looked up how to say that word, and we had it written out so that we could pronounce it. But yeah, I would give it a thumbs up as well. I think it's really cool that it kind of draws parallels with some other stories. And like it's got a flood story. It's got stories about giants, which I know Christianity has a lot of stories like that too. So I'm going to give it a thumbs up.
I wanted to bring it up, and I completely forgot because we got so derailed by Robert's big brain about all things Mexican. I was going to bring up how they parallel to the Anunnaki in the Mesopotamian world, and how those things seem to be, and not only that, the Anunnaki, but the Nephilim in the biblical world, especially if you believe or read the book of Enoch. So I also am going to give it a huge thumbs up because it is bizarre to me and telling to me, not only that we have a flood story throughout the United States or the whole world, but we also now have giants throughout the whole world. So also a thumbs up. Robert?
Well, I'd say, am I going to give my own thing a thumbs down? No, I'd say a thumbs up, and I'd say a thumbs up, and there was something that I didn't mention, and I'll just give you a little teaser now. Some people believe that these giants still exist.
Really?
And they are in the form, right. There are 2 Mexican Bigfoot creatures, and one of them is shy and lives in the jungle, and that's called the Sisamite, but the other one is called the Cuatlacas. And that's more like the North American Bigfoot. And it's said to be up to 10 feet tall. And some people say that those are the existing Kinametzin who are still alive and living in the forests of Mexico, in the remote forests.
Okay.
So there's more to be exploring here with this topic. So, yeah.
Okay, Robert. So you can't just drop that at the end of the episode and then not expect
We're going to have a
to
part
come
2.
back on for another episode and start talking about that.
You're going to make me make a commitment? What? No. No. I would entertain the idea of coming back,
Well, see, we appreciate that very much.
We talked before, and we talked through email that this might be my last interview ever because I'm getting kind of tired of the whole Mexico Unexplained thing. But I would be willing to come back on again to continue the conversation.
That'd be awesome.
One of the things that Jerry and Brett and I are going to do, and I just want to throw this out there because we're not on a time limit anymore. Ain't that right, Brett? Woohoo! So when I was 13, 14, I had an experience with what I believe was a Bigfoot. I've talked about it here. I'm not ashamed of it. I'm not. If I'm wrong about it, prove me wrong. I have a corroborating witness who was with me and has actually been brave enough to come on the program and talk about it. And it was a scary thing that I never want to go through again. Some people say, "Oh, I've been through that. I'd like to do it again. I'll shoot him," or whatever. So we often will talk about Bigfoot. We go to Bigfoot festivals. We do these things because it's a huge thing. And I absolutely 1,000,000%, regardless of what Brett says, do not believe that Bigfoot was started with a guy in a suit. There's no way possible. Okay. So we got to get you back on to have that conversation. Also, Just want to throw it out there. I know you're all the way in central Nebraska, but if you ever want to come to Kentucky and go on a Bigfoot walk, we are going back this year to the spot that I had my encounter. So You're welcome to join us on that.
Thank you. That's
fun
nice.
stuff. We'd appreciate it.
Wow.
As far as that goes, let's call it a night. and call it a show. And I am so freaking excited for everything that you've been here and shared with us. We hope if this is your last episode, if this is your last interview, I truly believe it's a disservice to the rest of the world. Your brain is unbelievable and it needs to be picked far more than we can ever do it.
Well, I appreciate the sentiment, really. I just like talking about this stuff, and it sticks with me, so I have a lot that's up here, from all of my experiences and stuff, and I like what I do. So yeah.
Well, man, I certainly appreciate it. I'm not going to make you stick through all the other stuff. We'll go ahead and call it a day, and you have a wonderful day. If this is the end, Robert, we appreciate you choosing our platform to make that happen. We pray and hope that it's not, because intelligence of a impartial way that you have needs to be expanded, not deleted. Wouldn't you agree, Brett?
100%. Yeah. I really hope selfishly that you stick with it just so we can have you back on.
Right. Absolutely.
Well, thanks for giving me another opportunity. I appreciate that.
Again,
it's been
the
fun.
name of the book is, Robert, go ahead and let's give one more plug to your awesome book.
Mexico's Hidden History. That's my latest book, and that's the 4th book in the series of books that I have from Mexico Unexplained. I also have a coloring book for the kiddies. So I have the Mexican Monsters coloring book too that you can get. So it's the illustrated version of the book. And so anybody who wants to contact me or find out more about what I do, you can go to mexicounexplained.com. There is no paywall there. Everything is free. You can download all the episodes. You can read all the scripts. And at the end of each script that I have, each write-up for the show, I have references. So if you want to continue going down the proverbial rabbit hole, you can follow the trail and, look at the references and, go from there. So.
Well, I can speak for Jerry, who's not here. That is what makes the thing for Jerry the thing. Because when he can track it and he can go down a rabbit hole and still not find the answer he's looking for, that's what convinces Jerry. That and multiple witnesses. We're going to also, real quick, I just want to send out prayers to my cousin who was in a house fire last night, lost everything. Prayers would be appreciated. They're tough folk. My family's a hard type of family. They will persevere. But this winter is no joke. If you're using space heaters or heaters of any sort that's not your regular heat, be aware that stuff does bad. Be safe. Thank you, Robert Bideau, for being on the show, being a regular. We'd love to have you back whenever.
Thanks.
Even if you quit and you want to come back 5 years from now, come see us. We'll be here.
Okay, great. Sounds